conducting this meeting. Fill out a form at the front of by the door there. Turn it into Sadie over here. She'll make sure I get it during citizen group comment. So I appreciate that. And we're going to have a 30-second moment of silence, if that's okay, before we start. I'm going to now call the Estacada City Council to order. And if you'll please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Sadie, can I have recall, please? Roll call. Thank you.
Counselor Dunsmuir,
Present.
Counselor Gates,
Here.
Counselor Hughes. Here. Counselor Lidkey,
Here.
Counselor Strobel,
Here.
Counselor Tenbush,
Here.
Mayor Drinkwine.
Here, thank you very much. We are at Citizen Community Group Comment. I have Reliance Connects, Matt Day and Scott like to present. So appreciate seeing you guys. Been a while. Some of you can tell us what Reliance is up to. Yeah, just go
Yes.
right up here.
Thanks for having us. I'm Matt Day, work for Reliance.
Yep. Scott Crosby.
So we're both part of the family, the Reliance family. So last year we came and talked to the city of Estacada and kind of did an update of where we were with our fiber projects and what's been going on. So actually it's been exactly a year since we did it last. So I asked Melanie if we could come up and kind of do it again. So thank you very much for having us. Next slide, please. So kind of want to get a little bit of history of Reliance Connects in Estacada. It started back in 1905. It was called Estacada Telephone and Telegraph Company. And from what our grandparents tell us, it was like 5 farmers that got together and strung open wire along fence lines. It was kind of just party lines between some of the neighbors around here. And they had some ownership and you could buy into it. So it started with originally 5 people. Our great-grandparents, they were from Staten and they owned a small share in the Estacada Telephone and Telegraph. But in 1924, they ended up buying the rest of it out. It was going through some financial hard times, I guess, and wasn't really making it. And they came up here to kind of, protect their investment and really took over Estacada Telephone and Telegraph. The photo here is on the corner of 3rd and Zobrist. That building still stands as where our central office is. And the older man on the left, that's our great-grandfather, Floyd Day. And then the guy to the right, that's my grandpa Day, or our grandpa Dwayne Day, and he's going to be 92 in July. And that picture was took in 1957. So Dwayne took over in 57 and lived here most of his life until he got really old and moved to Portland. But he's kind of the one who grew it. And then in 1965, we began serving an area in Antelope, Oregon. That's about 100 customers. We have 0.2 customers per square mile. So it's really rural. In 1970, they changed the name of Estacada Telephone and Telegraph to Cascade Utilities. 72, we began serving Corbett, Oregon, and our exchange goes from just on the border of Sandy to the Columbia River to Multnomah Falls. So a pretty rural area there. In 76, we began serving Elkton, which is down out of Roseburg, between Roseburg and Reedsport. 1979, we started serving Haines, Oregon. It's just a very small community just north of Baker City. And then in 86, we began serving an area in Mesquite, Nevada. So that brings us to today's time. In 2000, we began serving internet and all of our exchanges. We started with dial-up and DSL. It was 256 kilobit. So we've come a long ways since then. And then in 2007, we changed our name to Reliance Connects. So it's always been the same company all the way since 1905. So, next slide, please. These are some cool pictures we thought we'd throw up here. And you guys might have seen it around town. We have this picture on the right-hand side. Is our great-great-grandmother, Alva, in the 20s. In Broadway, we had a little office there. And she was running the switchboard. And then her husband, Alva, here, when the bridge was built in 1936 going across the Clackamas, he was one of the first guys to drive across it, and he got his picture took with a car. So they dates way back. Next slide, please. So a big part of our company, besides the community, is our employees. We have 96 total employees working here in Estacada through all the kind of Reliance companies. 62 of those 96 live and actually work here in Estacada. We have family wage jobs and benefits. Our median employment term is 12 years. We have many employees who have been with us for over 40. So we're 100% local service. We live here and we work here. Next slide. So one of the things with Reliance and our employees is their community involvement. So we've been sponsors of the American Cancer Society, the Estacada Schools, Estacada Community Foundation, Estacada Youth Sports, Estacada Parks. Our employees have been on chamber boards, Estacada Community Foundation boards, fire boards, city council, Chamber of Commerce, and others. So I think our employees live here and they have a real sense of pride in the community, as you can see from some of these examples up here. Next slide, please. So we're headquartered in Estacada for all the telephone companies. So like our internet help desk, we're going to serve all the areas, but they're here in our town. We serve 150.5 square miles, which doesn't sound like a big number, but it's a pretty big area. We have 5,265 internet customers, 2,658 telephone customers. And that's really done a huge flop in the last several years. It used to be a reversal. So that's 34.98 internet customers per square mile. And another interesting fact is we serve up the Clackamas River all the way to Mount Hood Meadows. And that total area that we serve is 981 square miles. So earlier in about 2000, I think 10, we already had a fiber optic line that went from Estacada to Ripplebrook. We extended that line from Ripplebrook up around Timothy Lake all the way to Mount Hood Meadows. So we have fiber capabilities to serve all the PGE and Job Corps and Ripplebrook and the dams and hydro facilities and everything in between. So it's a huge area. Next slide, please. So a little bit more about our area, and just for comparison, we actually had this slide last time we talked to the city of Estacada, just to kind of tell how rural we are. So Estacada Eagle Creek total population is obviously growing, particularly here in Estacada. It's staggering. So again, our square footage is 150.5 square miles. Population per square mile is 91.22. And Portland, Oregon is smaller than Estacada and Eagle Creek, the actual city of Portland. And their population per square mile is 4,500. So we're in a different boat. So anyways, now I'm gonna let Scott finish.
All right. Thank you guys for having us. So this is just to illustrate kind of where we're at and where we're at today. So in the 70s, a lot of our plant was actually hung up on poles and aerial. And now we're changing that and we're doing everything underground. And so over the last 40 years, we've been putting things buried. So on the right-hand side, you can see is this was just about a month ago as us plowing fiber in a rural road here in Estacada. So, you know, we feel that it's a lot more reliable by being underground. It's protected a lot more. We don't really have the outages by being that way. So, and our maintenance is much less by being underground. So go ahead, Sadie. Next slide, please. And so this one here demonstrates what our 5-year plan is. Obviously, most of it's green, and that's all the areas that we serve with fiber and or VDSL, which is a higher broadband package. And then in this year's budget is the yellow. And so we're just keep on moving outside further and further away from the core parts of our community and hitting the outskirts of the roads. So Matt said earlier, we have about 5,300 customers. Of those 5,300 customers, 3,400 are on fiber today, and 1,900 are on copper. And a majority of those ones that are on copper actually can get fiber, but just haven't upgraded. So, and we're doing about 700 fiber installs a year, so quite a bit. Go ahead, next slide, please. So here's our core routers that we have. So these are Cisco 9000s. We have 2 of them. Everything we do, we try to be redundant. So these boxes might look, you know, nice and shiny, but they're very, very expensive and very much top of the line, especially when we did this project. By being fully redundant, we're allowed to do upgrades, maintenance without affecting our customers. So we can do firmware updates, we can shut down a full server and none of our customers know. And granted, we do most of these maintenance during the middle of the night, so most of our customers will know. But yeah, so these boxes here are one of our main interfaces between us and the customers, their authentication and how they get onto the internet. And we also have 15 10 gig ports on this. And we're running about 19% capacity. So we're doing just fine there. Go ahead and go to the next slide, please. Here it shows our fiber redundancy. So currently we have 3 different routes into Portland with 2 different providers. So each provider we have about 20 gigs of traffic capable of. And so if we have one provider that's having any sort of issues, it automatically falls back onto the other provider, again, without our customers knowing. So we spent a lot of time and a lot of money getting fully redundant out of Estacada, just because it's not a good idea to have our plant being stuck down one path where it could get hit or cut or damaged. And then even in Portland, we try to be fully redundant there, where if one of our providers is having problems in Portland, which has happened, the other provider can handle the backup. In Portland, we go to the PIDOC. We also connect at NWACS, so we compare with Amazon, Microsoft, and a bunch of major players in there. And actually here in local, in our central office, we actually have caching servers with Netflix and Google. And so we've had problems in Portland with our providers, and our customers have no idea that's anything's going on because of those caching servers. So it's pretty awesome. If we need to, we can go to the Bay Area, Seattle, and get out of Portland. Obviously, it's a major problem having all this traffic going in the Portland area because of the Cascadia earthquake zone, excuse me. So we have the capability of getting out of Portland as well. Let's go to the next slide, please. Here we have our managed wireless or managed Wi-Fi devices. So we offer these to our customers, and it's offering the top of the line, the newest and latest and greatest in the wireless capabilities.
which is the AX Wi-Fi 6. So these have a tremendous amount of reach and capacity, and it handles most people's house just fine. But if we ever have problems where we have a dead zone or something like that, we also have the capability of extending the wireless signal with those little white devices called a Wi-Fi extender. And so these things we can do wirelessly in the home, or we could hardwire them into a shop or to an outbuilding. And again, it just allows our customers still connected to the internet and further spots. Let's go to the next slide. So this one here, we talk about our speed packages. We try to, we do studies yearly on what our speed packages are versus what our competitors are or what our other telcos are doing. We try to be as competitive as very possible, but obviously us versus Portland is not the same, with 90 customers per square mile, 40 customers per square mile versus 4,500. So we feel our prices are very competitive. And we actually, last year when we met with you guys, we did a big speed package upgrade for our customers at no extra cost. So we doubled and tripled some of our packages, as well as doing gigabit services. So like the gigabit package right now, we offer that at 109.95. And if you looked at Starlink, it's 110 and for a fraction of the capability. Let's go next slide, please. This year, we actually started introducing voice over internet protocol or VoIP. So this really applies to most businesses versus the residential market, where a traditional business might buy a key system that costs $10,000 or $20,000 or $30,000, where we can do this phone, which has almost the same exact features and functions, but it's at a fraction of the price. So, and it's, you know, top of the line on the different features that are out there. It's pretty great. Let's go next slide. So then we talk about kind of what's next for us. Obviously, finishing our 5-year plan on getting fiber to every house in our exchange. We're committed to that. We're going to continue to invest there. But beyond that, we were looking at the next technologies. And so right now we have some equipment in our central office that we can test 2 gig, 5 gig, 10 gig. We haven't got to that 100 gig yet, but it's very much there. We can buy it. We just haven't had the need yet. So it's coming. We're always trying to stay ahead of any sort of new technology or any sort of bandwidth constraints that we might have. So yeah, and this right here, this is a new distribution cabinet that we have inside of our central office. So every one of those little black cables there is a fiber going to a business, a home. And we have, I think, 7 of those bays that are pretty much full in our central office. And one thing I want to tell you guys, if you guys ever want to come in to do a tour, I'm happy to show you guys and spend as much time as you guys want. Go ahead, next slide. So, and that was really our presentation. We spend a lot of time and money in our community. We're investing constantly. We're committed to our town. And so, yeah, you guys have any questions for us?
Yeah, I'll open that up for questions now. Do anybody have questions for Scott or Matt while we're here? Okay.
Thank you for taking the time, you guys. Last year when we met, I had asked about internet connections for specifically an apartment complex on Elm. That really shocked me that they, being so close to your headquarters, still did not have fiber getting to those apartments. Has there been any progress on that in the last year? And if no progress has been made, are you guys looking at trying to bring fiber internet to all of the downtown Estacada customers? And that's just one apartment complex that I'm aware of. Out of curiosity, second part of that question is, how many more people downtown in the city of Estacada still don't have access to the fiber?
Yep. So all of our single family homes have access, and all of our businesses have access. Our MDUs, apartments don't. And that's because it's very, very expensive to get into those areas. And it's a partnership between us and the property owner. And so we work on it. We have, I think, one apartment complex that right now doesn't have the capacity or capability of getting VDSL. So we have the technology right now that at Elm Street or Hillway Apartments that they can get 100 by 50, which isn't fiber, it's not gigabit, but it's still a very, very fast internet package. So we're working on it. It's just, it's a struggle. It's really difficult for us.
We do have a cabinet ordered for, I think it was like the Cascadia Village Apartments up by the Rivermount Elementary to get them on VDSL. The big issue with a lot of the apartments, not actually getting the fiber there, but it's the wiring inside the units are so old that even if we did get fiber there, they're, daisy chained or Cat3 wiring that isn't sufficient to carry the bandwidth. So we would end up having to rewire the whole facility. So you're right, though, it's a struggle. So.
Well, and, we just got done with a workshop with the DEIC committee, talking about what they might be able to do. And honestly, when we talk about DEI, income brackets are part of the diversity that we experience in our city. And it's a little disheartening to hear that pretty much the people within our city that don't have access to the internet that the rest of us have access to are probably those people living in the lower income brackets. And I would really, really like to see maybe in the next year, Reliance Connects maybe work with the DEI to help identify the barriers that exist. You just identified several barriers right there. And I really wonder if the city might be able to help partner with those private apartment owners to help maybe apply for grants to increase the wiring. There's been so much talk about how access to the internet is, it's a human right at this point. And we need to, as a city, be working harder to make sure that everybody has equal access to it. And I would really like to see maybe in the next year, the city partnering, whether it be through the DEIC, the infrastructure committee, or whatever committee might be most appropriate. I'd really like to see more effort being done to try to bring the same level of internet access to everybody in all the income brackets, including those in the lowest. Unless you have anything else to say about that, I was going to move on, but yeah.
My understanding is that the apartments next to Rivermel are the only apartments that aren't getting either fiber or the VDSL. And we
Okay.
do have a cabinet on order with supply chain. No, it's just not here yet. So other than that, yeah, everybody's gonna be able to get the 100 meg internet, and most MDUs, duplexes, fourplexes, stuff like that do have fiber. So I think we're only talking about one location, and the fiber's there.
Okay.
So
Well, that's good to hear.
We could, but you're right, though. I think we could do a better job working with property owner there and get that done.
And I think if the city needs to help act as a sort of bridge between your company and the private owners of those apartment complexes or the MDUs or anything like that, I think that would be a really great step in the right direction. One of the slides that I'm going to move on to the next one because I've got 3 questions. I'm sorry. One of the slides that you showed was really cool. You had 96 people working in the city of Estacada, but only 62 of them actually live here. I was curious why 1/3, if what your opinion is or what your observations are about why 1/3 of your workforce that works in Estacada chooses not to live in the city.
I think some of the higher tech jobs, like particularly our internet side and the help desk side, a lot of those people come from out of town, and it's been harder to attract local people to those jobs.
Is there something that, is it because they can't find a place to live in Estacada once they get a job out here? Or is it because they're choosing not to live in Estacada? I was just kind of curious what
I think in the past, for some of that younger demographic, it was they choose to live in Portland. And now we're hearing, yes, I want to move out here, but it's so expensive to buy a home and it's so competitive. I have an employee today that I was talking with, a young gal who grew up in Estacada and works in our commercial office. and she ended up buying over in Malala, and she's been looking here for 2 years. So it's tough.
I really appreciate your guys' perspective on that. You know, we've been having a greater conversation with the city about housing needs. And really, I wanted to bring that up and get your perspective on it because, you know, being a local employer and this kind of being the prime business for someone to live and work within their city, and to see that 1/3 of your workforce that works here within the city limits does not actually live in the city. I wanted to just get your perspective on it. I do appreciate your perspective. My last question.
Katie,
So-
can
oh,
I
yeah.
say something on that? real quick?
Yes. Uh-huh.
So I'm one of that 1/3.
Oh, okay.
And yep, and so part of the reason why is because of our roads. So my wife would not have us move out here because of the roads, because it takes too long to get to the freeway. And our roads out here are a congestion.
Okay.
So
I appreciate that perspective as well.
We've got to kind of move on so other people can.
Well,
speak.
yeah, okay. Well, I've got one last question.
Let's make it quick.
The internet packages that you guys offer, the $80 package is the lowest price that we have. Now that is going to be pretty hard for some people to achieve. Are you offering any programs or packages for people in the lower income brackets?
So those are our fiber speeds.
Okay,
So we do have lower speeds, like if, let's say somebody just wanted to check their email or they have one TV and they watch Netflix, there's, you know, lower price packages. Also, part of everybody's telephone bill, you know, they're paying the federal universal service charge, and we're paying into that on behalf of internet customers also. There was an emergency broadband program that we participated in, and I would think it was a $50 discount. And now there's the ACP, Affordable Connectivity Program, which is a $30 off your internet bill if you meet certain income requirements. And it's very, very broad. And we advertise that and we put it on our website and we have it in our front office. And there's also the state Oregon Telephone Assistance Program, and there's the Federal Lifeline Program. So there's a lot of ability out there to get discounts.
thank you.
I'll make mine quick. First of all, I work in the industry, you guys do. I mean, I've been in it for 20 years, so I'd love to come see how you guys have things set up. So whenever we can get, I don't know if we want a council tour, or I'd love to come to schedule one with you.
sure.
But a couple things that Katie had spoke to real quick. 50 megabits in a home can pretty much run everything, multiple TVs, everything else like that. So the lower packages are perfectly acceptable for on DSL, VDSL. So that's one thing. And then one of the things in the industry I've known that's really adjusted is remote workforce. How much of your guys' workforce is remote these days?
It's pretty slim, the remote workforce. I bet all of our technicians, our customer service, our central office staff, our line crew, they have to be working. Our accountants are mostly there, but they've kind of morphed into this hybrid approach where maybe they'll work, you know, one day, but we don't have any really employees that are fully remote right now that I can think of.
Yeah, maybe a couple. But one part that is really nice is 2/3 of our staff works here. And so to go to the office isn't that big of a deal. It's not driving an hour or 45 minutes into Portland. So most of them feel like, hey, you know what, it's not that big of an inconvenience to go to the office. I think that's pretty common, pretty great.
Great, and we
Thanks.
thank you immensely for answering all those questions. I'm sorry it was so intense there for a minute.
It's all good.
But I just want to say, I've been here 16 years on this governmental board in some fashion, whether it be council or mayor. And I gotta say, I want to thank you for your contribution to the community and everything you have done over the years and everything you will do in the future. So I appreciate you. So thank you. And in that, I'm going to let you go.
Can I
without
ask,
any-
can I ask one
Sure,
question?
go ahead.
Sorry, just one quick. And I want to say thank you also, because I know that Reliance and your family were instrumental in getting the skate park up and running too. There's probably other things that you may have been involved in that we just don't know about. So thank you. But I wanted to ask, I don't think you touched on like the provider of last resort or something like that. Like, why don't you just pick and choose, like this area is easy to get to, this area is easy, but that's kind of challenging, so we'll get to them later. How does that work? Are you regulated to do that? Or how does that work for you guys?
So yes, we're a regulated ILAC. And that's a incumbent local exchange carrier. And there's lots of us that cover most of the geography of the United States. And what happened, back in the 20s when they were putting power out to places, it wasn't economical for a company to come out and put electricity to Estacada. So they set up a mechanism, a funding mechanism, where part of your power bill would get set in a pool, and then they would make those providers go out and serve these rural areas. But that money in that pool would help it make economic sense.
Okay.
So like in Antelope, for example, we have 0.2 customers per square mile. It's a massive exchange. If you went out there to try to serve those people, I mean, our cost per customer per month is $400. You would never make a profit. It would be very hard to make a profit in geography like Estacada and Eagle Creek if you served everybody like we do. So we get funds from the federal government to help assist, doesn't pay at all, it assists in building infrastructure out to our customers so they can get rates that are similar to more metropolitan areas. And part of that deal is you don't get to just pick and choose who you want to serve. You have to serve everybody 100%. And we have obligations on our speed, and we're checked on it. And our goal and the commitment that we've signed is that we're going to have those speeds to these customers within 10 years. And you're like 3 of 10, and we're going to blow that out of the water.
Great.
So we couldn't just go, I mean, I guess if it was not in our area, but we can't just go into the new subdivisions when they're digging the trenches and throwing our pipe and say, okay, we're going to serve you guys because it's gravy, but we're going to forget the guys on George Loop or anywhere else.
Right.
So we serve everybody.
Okay, thank you. I was somewhat familiar with that, but thank you for explaining that. So,
So thank you, gentlemen. We
All right.
appreciate it.
Thanks for
Mr.
having
Mayor,
me.
Thank
yeah,
you.
thank you.
Mr. Mayor, guys, can I say something?
Yeah,
Oh,
get 'em
yep.
on the screen.
I don't have a question. I just have a comment. I really want to commend Reliance Connects and on keeping Estacada moving through the disasters that we've suffered, keeping Estacada, keeping the service up in Estacada during the disasters, during the fire, during the ice storm, getting everything back up and working as quick as possible, keeping their employees employed, and working through COVID has been amazing. I really want to commend Reliance Connects and the companies involved in Reliance Connects on the job that they've done. It's been pretty amazing, and I know my family's part of the Reliance family, and I just really want to say good job keeping the services up and keeping everybody going through the hard times that we suffered. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you guys for having us.
Thank you.
Okay, next on our list, we have the Estacada Fire Board. I have Paul Miller. Want to tell us a little about what's happening?
Well, what would you like to know?
Everything and anything you've got.
So we currently are fully staffed now. Sarah Poet, the fire marshal, just started. She just hit the ground running. I know she's been over here a few times meeting, and I'm sure it's going to take her a while to get everything settled in. On May 26th, we have a community open house, basically. We're going to talk about Firewise, wildland fire, basically something I wanted to see last year, but there were so many things to do in a compressed amount of time, we weren't able to get it done. So it's nice to see that going on now. We are going through our second training academy right now. When these candidates turn out, we will have right around 40 volunteers. Everything's been going really well. We ended up with roughly $1.4 million from the Wildland Urban Interface grant. So we've purchased a type 3, a type 6, and a new water tender. Unfortunately, the type 3 and type 6 with all the backlogs and everything, we're not going to have that until about September, October. And then the water tender is going to be the year after that. Things are actually going really, really well. We've had tremendous growth in our community in the last 2 years, which has helped our funding tremendously. And then, you know, with the changes, we're in life, I believe everything bad that happens, there's something that comes good. And with what we went through in September of 20 and what was all going there, it gave us a chance for a brand new restart. And hopefully, Matt, you agree that we've got it right at this point. It's going really well. So that's about all I have to offer. Things are, you know, hasn't really been any hiccups. So
That's what I
anyway,
like to hear.
yeah,
Council got any questions for Paul?
be happy to answer
No?
anything.
Any, Jerry, anything, Justin? No? Okay, I want to thank you, Paul, for
Oh,
presenting.
Not a problem. Thank you.
Joel's got something for you.
Sorry, what's the response been like over the last, you know, we get reports from the oh my goodness, the Clackamas County Sheriff's Office, but we really don't see much in how.
So that's one
trends
thing
are.
I'm glad you brought up. So on my phone, I got Pulse Point and you got something else. So I'm constantly watching that. And I'm very impressed when we'll get 3 calls in 15 minutes and they're all handled. We take great pride. I take great pride in mutual aid. We have given our predecessor more mutual aid than we have gotten from them. We really, you know, the response times to, you know, get to Dodge, get to George, whenever our 3 paid go out and go up to George, well, that's a pretty big round trip. So volunteers come in to, you know, make the calls and to see them, you know, having 3 calls in 15 minutes and get it taken care of. It's really been a good deal. Yes, Katie.
I thought you guys were staffing the George. Fire
We
Station.
are staffing it with volunteers.
Okay.
And that's another thing is that is being staffed more. I've lived up there since '05. It's being staffed more now than it's ever been since I've been there. There again, it's volunteers. Another one we got going on is we have, what was it, 18 more EMTs certified now. So we added to, you know, 18 more volunteer certified EMTs. So yeah, things are growing and culture's good and it's really moving forward. So anyway.
I just have one last question for you.
Sure.
I remember when you first started, Paul, you told me you didn't know if we could cut it. How do you feel now?
Well, getting involved in looking at 6 months and what we had to get done. I mean, we had equipment and we had buildings. We had to put the complete, you know, you're talking about the transition committee,
Sure.
the complete infrastructure in, and then having the stress of, hey, we got one chance to get this right, to get this culture laid in, get a chief, deputy chief, you know, and then the paid people and whatnot. In the beginning, I felt we came up short. When you look at, we coming up with resumes for fire chief and all that stuff, and we had all these boxes. I didn't feel that people were filling all those boxes. But after July 1st came, I looked back and realized I don't think there was anybody out there that could fill all those boxes. We were asking so much. And then to see the leadership come in and actually get going, coming from someone that's never done it before, you know, with the fire department, you know, I've had a business and whatnot, but not a fire department. Seeing that leadership come in, one thing Chief O'Connor is really, really good at is wildland firefighting. And so that is a really good asset that we have. I brought a trainer in last summer and did wildland S-190 training for us. Chief O'Connor, that's one thing that he really pushes is that type for our community. You know, we all know what happened September 2020. So basically that's something that he really has a handle on, but regular ops for in the city and stuff he does too. So, I mean, I feel that we definitely have the right chief. We have the right people. Like I said, culture is really good. It's going, I mean, we're taking it very, very serious as to the growth of this community. I sit here and say, okay, how much longer can the service plan that we have handle this? But then when you see 3 calls get answered in 15 minutes, it's being taken care of. But, you know, with the growth we've had in the last 2 years, how much longer? So what our biggest liability right now, I feel, is beds. We only have 10 beds in our district. And we have 3 paid on shift, 2 students, that takes the 5 in the firehouse, 2 beds in the little house, and 3 beds in George. 40 volunteers. Volunteers want to pull shifts. They want to spend the night. They want to go on calls. They have to have a bed to be there. We have the equipment, we have the people, it's beds, for short beds. And you can't put bunk beds in rooms. So, you know, we already tried that. So anyway, but, any other questions?
No, I'm not seeing any, but we want to thank you.
Oh, it's been my pleasure.
I thank you for the candidness. I thank you for bringing it forward because I remember when this all started.
Oh,
I'm
yeah.
not sure if it could be pulled
Yeah,
off, but
it was-
you guys have done immense work. And I
I,
commend you in that and everybody that you've got on staff there. And I know they don't hear it from us very often.
yeah.
But if there's anything we can do to sit down with the city and figure this bed problem, maybe you should bring it and see what we can do. I
Well,
mean,
there's
something.
NFPA rules about how close a firefighter sleeps to the rig
Yeah, I guess.
and whatnot. But no, I think that that's something that we need to really work on, is a relationship between us and the fire district. I know in the past, it hasn't been the best. And I guess just lack of communication, lack of anything. And I think we need to work together on that. And I'm supposed to attend these meetings to see what's going on in the city and whatnot, but we had a work session on the other meeting here a couple weeks ago, and so I couldn't make it. So, but yeah, it's all good. So,
It goes both ways. I've missed a few myself.
yeah.
But I appreciate you and yeah, we're definitely gonna have to get together and make this what it really is. And I think the fire department in the city and the relationship we have is very important to the future that you guys are looking at.
It is for the community, and just to get real data of what's going on for building permits and everything else and forecasts. You know, I haven't seen it, but I've heard that the new sewage treatment plant is going to be sited at Folsom. And then, I don't know if you guys know, but Terry Emmert just bought the Eagle Creek Golf Course.
I did not know. that.
Yeah, so there's 680 acres there, I guess. So, you know, I think he's counting on you guys putting that sewage treatment plant there, because that'll be one heck of a development for him. So, you know, and that's things like knowing what you guys are doing for infrastructure with that. I mean, I've always felt for years the city's going to grow this way because it's not going to go up the hill that way. And so for fire department stuff and response times and ISO ratings, we have to make sure that we can provide service in X amount of time to ensure those ISO ratings. Right now, with the data that we have, that location is the absolute perfect location. So there's no sense in moving it somewhere, but 20 years from now, that might be a different story. These new houses that are going in, you know, they're to today's code with wiring and everything else. They're safer, less, you know, more fire resistant. Usually people that move into these newer communities are younger, so you don't have as many medical calls. So, you know, 20 years from now, to the north is probably the direction it should be getting to go. So anyway.
Well, good. Thank you, sir.
You're welcome. Thank you.
All right. I have one more coming up, Lisa Davidson, and I'm going to let her tell you all about herself. It's good to see you.
I'm Lisa Davidson. Wow, this is great here. This is a good microphone. Lisa Davidson, and I'm here tonight because I am one of the candidates for House District 51, which is Estacada, new boundaries, Estacada, Canby, Sandy, and rural Oregon City. And I was wanting, the reason for coming tonight is just so that you can see a face with a name. I'm just one of the candidates. But my background is that I was dean at Clackamas Community College, and I was overseeing the connections with business and industry area. And so I've been in Estacada a lot, been in Estacada and Canby. Sandy was just right outside of that district. But so I actually worked with Matt all the time. So I didn't meet all of you, and I thought, this would be an opportunity for me to begin that relationship, to get to know you a bit better. We were talking about how can we strengthen the workforce here? How can we strengthen the connection between the high school and the college? So I was involved on the education side, as well as figuring out what we can do to strengthen the small businesses. So when I go to Salem, I'm going to say that because here we are, when I go to Salem, that will be something that I want to emphasize, is what do we do for our small businesses? Our small businesses in Oregon are not welcomed. They're, in fact, as I'm walking around, I may have met some of you or left a brochure on one of your doors. I'm meeting a lot of the people in Estacada as I'm just getting to know the citizens here, and trying to figure out who's going to stay here. I've got a lot of people saying I'm leaving. My business, this is not a place that you can have a small business successfully, and not Estacada, but Oregon. And so the idea of what can we look at for regulations and taxes, and what do we need to do to help Oregon become business friendly? The other issue that is a huge issue I'm hearing everywhere is the importance of workforce, making sure that we've got a workforce that can take the jobs in the community, as well as that we can have a strong workforce for the state. One of the divisions that I oversaw at the college was workforce. And so I know the workforce people in the state, I know them in the county. And so those will be two areas that I really will focus on. Another area is making sure that we've got infrastructure so industry can flourish in Clackamas County and our district. The idea of tolling and how that would impact the citizens in Estacada, how that would impact the citizens or the residents of our district, District 51. So my focus will be on business, workforce, and helping to strengthen the infrastructure. Again, my background before the college, I was in banking for 17 years and left there as vice president over training over 13 states. And I've owned my own small business for over 25 years. At this point, I pay about 40% of my income in taxes. And so you say, ooh, that's a struggle. You know, is this what we want for Oregon? So the reason why I wanted to come was to be able to introduce myself. When I win, you know, when I win the primary, we still have the rest of this year before the session starts in January. And I will want to come and spend some time getting to know what's going on in Estacada now, so that when I arrive in January, I will have some background on what's happening in Estacada the first few months, or actually the whole time of the long session. There won't be a lot of time to spend in Estacada. So I just am showing you my face, letting you know that I will want to spend some time with you and get to know the issues that are important to Estacada so that I can represent those in Salem.
We thank you, Lisa. That was
Thank
great.
you.
Any questions for Lisa before she hit that? No? Okay, thank you. All right, we are now at the consent agenda. You've all had a chance to read it. Are there any questions before we make a motion? No? Okay, can I have a motion on the floor, please?
I move to approve the consent agenda.
Sam, first, do I have a second?
Second.
First and second, all those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed? Okay, motion passes. Thank you very much. We are now at department and committee reports. You've all had a chance to read over the county sheriff's report. Are there any questions on that? No?
Chief Mendoza is at training this week, and so he wasn't able to make it tonight, but he is planning to come next month in person to speak with you all. So
Okay, great, thank you. And then I have committee, commission, and liaison reports. Do I have any right now?
yes.
Sure.
Thank you. So school board, board of directors meeting was April 14th. And of course, the musical already happened, but they talked about the success of at the time, you know, before they were really excited about Alice in Wonderland. And then they also discussed the choir trip to Disneyland. Just want to make note that the website for the school district is going through a transition period, and it is in progress. So I think they're trying to revamp the whole website for the district to make it a little bit more user-friendly, a little bit more equitable, accessible, things like that. So One thing to mention is that they are also, the school district is also up for the Top Workplaces Award. This would be for, if they win it, this would be the third year in a row. And just so you know, the Estacada School District has won 2 years in a row, and that is the only district in the state of Oregon that's done that. So pretty good place to work. So, stadium is still progressing really well. There was a flood, unfortunately, at the high school. I don't know if anybody heard, but the gym floors were affected. And so they are in the process with the insurance company for new flooring and bids for that. And it's kind of, it's not as bad as they thought it was going to be, but just still very an unfortunate thing. And what else can I mention? One thing that was kind of a little bit more, this was really cool, but just really like kind of tugged at my heartstrings. But Lisa Alves, or I hope I said her name right, Alves, I think it's Alves. She went up and spoke about her daughter Reagan, and her and her husband they're forming a memorial fund for Reagan. It'll be the Reagan Christine Memorial Fund. And since we're coming up on the 1-year anniversary of where we lost the teenagers last year around Memorial Day weekend. Anyway, Reagan, she was in my son's class. So it just kind of like hit me a little bit harder because I'm thinking, wow, could have been I could have lost my son. So they're starting a memorial fund, and the mission of that memorial fund is to provide, is to raise money for new graduates getting out of high school to kind of give them a leg up. And I think they're trying to develop a scholarship, or it will be a scholarship, but it's not going to be just for the student that has the perfect grades and this, that. They're looking for a student who's made an impact on the community. So something a scholarship that would help them, in college, or if they want to go to trade school or something like that. So this is the nonprofit that they're working on. I just thought that was a really cool idea and worth a mention. And if anybody wants to hear more about it, you can access the YouTube video with the school board of directors. And she goes into a little bit further depth, but for time purposes here, I'll leave it at that. And that's my report.
All right. Any other committee commission? Jerry, Justin, anything? No?
Yeah, so I'm not going to report on DEI since our DEI meeting was the council workshop. So, but the Arts Commission, they hosted another one-page Wednesday, was very successful, had a good turnout. The writers that showed up reading their work, I mean, all I can say is when a writer comes in and reads their work, it's so much different than somebody else reading their work. They're so passionate and so powerful. I recommend anybody and everybody experience it at least one time. Come down and try it out. It's the second Wednesday of every month, and it's the next one is at Harmony Baked. And the following one is at the library. They post it all the time on the Arts Commission or on the city page and everything. But it was another successful event by the Arts Commission. Really fun and positive. But yep, that's all I got.
All right, thank you, Jerry. I saw that Brett Dodger was here. Are you speaking on the Parks and Rec?
I think we have
All right.
reports from all of the committees and commissions
Okay,
right
great.
now. Yes.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Brent Dodrell, I'm the chair of the Parks and Rec Committee, and I serve with Gina Sherman and Kalika Stanton, Vincent Bellamo, and Stephen Scheibel. So it's exciting to see phase 3 of the park closer and closer to completion. I was privileged to be able to receive the check of that large donation towards the end. I think I was the only one around. That's why they called me, but that was exciting to see that. And we're excited. We're all excited to see that completed. We did our sprint into spring, which was a fun run, and Councilor Paul Strobel and your city manager, Melanie, both participated in that. It was a fun run, also meant to be a fundraiser. So we raised just about $800 to go towards phase 3 of the park. I was really pleased that both Orchid Health and Estacada School District sponsored the event. So it was good community participation.
Coming up May 14th is Art in the Park, and we'll be working with the Arts Commission to provide some activities in the park for children first or kindergarten, actually up through high school, to display and even sell their art in the park. So we have all the promo out for that now. And then coming up again is the Concert in the Park series, which starts on June 22nd and goes through August. And Rob Gaskell is helping us with scheduling all of the musicians. And so we're hopeful that most of those will be at the new amphitheater. So we keep hoping that'll be completed soon. So there's a lot going on. It's a great group to work with, and I'm privileged to be a part of it. Any questions, sir? Paul?
I just want to say what a great time I had at the run, and I hope it's the kickoff to many more. I
Yeah.
thought you guys did a fantastic job with that.
Thank you. Thanks for being there. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay, next I have the Downtown Estacada Commission. Okay,
Hello, can you guys hear me okay?
yes, we can. Thank you.
Awesome. Okay, my name's Taylor Gibson. I'm the chair of the DEC. Since we last spoke in January, the Downtown Estacada Commission has been very busy. You may have seen in your water bill or the article in the paper, we're in the middle of our Downtown Estacada Passport Program. There are 24 locations participating, and the deadline to complete the passport is Memorial Day. We've also been discussing empty buildings and their impact to the downtown core at our last meeting. We'd like to ask the council to consider adding a $100 annual fee to the vacant building registration code. You can consider a separate commercial and residential rate. Currently, there's no fee attached to the registration, but the code does allow for a fee to be added by resolution. We also ask that you consider adding maintenance requirements to the vacant building code. This would decrease blight and discourage vandalism. We're in the process of planning the 4th of July parade. Our theme this year is Remember When. We had originally discussed recognizing all of the community groups and their volunteers as the Grand Marshal, not realizing just how many groups are active in town. There are over 20 who would fit into this category. So instead, we would like to recognize the library and their dedication to maintaining services throughout COVID restrictions. We're also in the process of organizing the planning committees for Uncorked and Harvest Festival, and we welcome any volunteers for all of those events. And that's all I got.
We thank you. Are there any questions for Don? Good.
Are you guys going to be hosting an Uncorked event this year?
Yes, we're planning to put Uncorked and the Harvest Festival together. So we have one paid event and one non-paid event so that everybody can attend and families can attend as well.
Awesome, thank you.
Taylor, the $100 vacant building fee and then the maintenance code, is this something that you'll be presenting more on for us, or to give us more, or would you have more information to provide for us?
Yeah, so I can provide a little bit more information, and if you feel like you still need more, I'd be happy to put together like a little presentation for you guys. But essentially why we're bringing this up is there are several vacant buildings in the downtown area that people have tried renting. They've tried reaching out to the owners of the building, trying to get into them, and nobody responds, or they're not interested in renting. And so we're seeing some pretty large vacant buildings sitting right in the heart of our downtown that we could be utilizing. So what we're hoping to do is to encourage people to rent their buildings by them being able to avoid paying a fee, essentially. So that's kind of where we're trying to go with it, I guess.
If there's like a consensus of the council, you could direct staff to work with the DEC to bring back more information on that for you.
That sounds good.
I love the idea, but personally, I really wonder how much $100 a year is going to kind of change the scale. I would be really open to considering a monthly fee or even a higher annual fee if that's something that we're looking at. And when we do have that conversation, I would really love if we could also include any potential information about potentially adding this to vacant residential areas as well. Personally, I'm aware of at least 2 or 3 vacant units sitting in an apartment complex that haven't been touched in a matter of months, where people could be renting those. And we hear every day that rentals are hard to find. Well, rentals are sitting vacant right there on Elm that nobody's doing anything with and haven't done anything with in 3 months. If we could encourage those owners to maybe step it up and try to rent out those places so that they're not sitting vacant, we could actually be providing more services to our people in our city. So I would love to kind of loop those conversations in together while we're having that conversation on the commercial side. If we could at least get some information about how it could affect residential as well. I'd
Okay.
really love that.
Yeah, thank you.
So I sat in the liaison for the DEC there, but I sat in on the meeting and I was pretty excited to hear you guys are going to use to recognize all the volunteer groups in the city, because there are a lot, from the food bank to ECW to churches and things like that. Is there no way to continue with that and just give them recognition, because they do a lot of service in the community, and then to swing back by the library gets a lot of recognition for things? Or can you do a portion of them and then try to lay that out over time? I thought that was a pretty cool thing you guys are going to try to do there.
Yes, I think the reason that we were heading in a different direction is that sometimes having so many people at the beginning of a parade can cause some safety issues and slow down the parade when we're trying to kind of keep things moving. So that's kind of why we had decided to go a different route. I'm happy to bring it back to the DEC and see if they have any ideas of how we can make it work.
Even if you can't do it just in the parade, maybe you can identify those groups, which since you guys have gone through the work of identifying the groups, I'd actually be interested to have you guys provide that to us, just so that those groups are getting the recognition for the work they're doing one way or another.
Sure.
I think it's good for the city to find some way to recognize it. And I thought the parade was a good way, but you make sense with the safety issue. But I mean, we do a lot of events. If we can find a way to work them in, that'd be kind of cool.
Yeah, definitely. I can take that back to the group for sure.
Okay, thank you, Taylor.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Taylor.
Next down, we have the library board.
Hi, this is Connie. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Are you there? Okay. I'm going to keep this pretty short because you guys have already had an hour-long meeting. The library board is working on the use and fee for the new community building and the floral building. So we'll be taking reservations for both of those and kind of streamlining the process. The biggest thing coming up though is our outreach van. We've been working, or Michelle has been working on that for months. And with the Arts Commission doing their thing in the park on May 14th, that is also going to be the day that we reveal the van. It's going to be there. It's going to be for everybody to take a look at and just kind of, show it off. It's really incredible. It's beautiful. The big concern we have for the van is where to store it. We were hoping to use the bus barn, but I guess they don't have room. So we want to find a place that's behind a locked gate fence, something like that. We can't have it on the library grounds because we don't have secure parking for it. So if you know of any place that's available, please contact Michelle. And as usual, I want to thank Michelle and her staff for the incredible job they do, keeping the community first in their thoughts on how to provide a great service. And also thank you to Councilor Strobel. Paul has just been great. He's been at our meetings. He gives us input and is a great liaison for the library board. And that's it.
Okay, great. Thank you, Connie. Katie has a question for you. Well,
Is there a particular barrier to the library van being parked in the same area that our public works vehicles park in?
It's a little
Are
challenging.
they down there?
Oh, go ahead, Connie.
Okay, Michelle, or no, go ahead.
Okay.
I don't know. Melanie?
The only barrier is that we don't have room inside the shop to park it and to leave it out. We've had we don't feel that it's as safe as it should be if it is there in the yard. So all that to say, Public Works probably needs some improved facilities and more indoor parking for vehicles and equipment, which is coming up, but isn't.
Well,
So,
And Melanie, we had talked about if we don't have a cover, we can get a tarp or something to put over it. You know, which might be good because it would hide it from being so conspicuous.
Mhm.
well, it sounds like the city's had a negative experience in the past with having vehicles parked not indoors. Is that what I'm hearing from Melanie? So, okay.
So we have considered, we're working on that with
Yeah,
Michelle.
it's a
She's
unique
looking,
problem.
yeah, she's looking for another location, also a place that's easy for them to access on a daily basis, which the shop isn't that far away. But that's one consideration. She's looking at another one too. We're just concerned about putting it someplace that it could be accessed at night when nobody's there watching.
Something just to consider on that particular thing, either right out here, we have law enforcement out here a couple times a night, minimal. And then, or right over here in a public parking lot, the fire department's there in and out constantly throughout the night. So there's people moving in that area. So
Mhm,
there might
that's
be
true.
scenarios to consider as well, at least in the short term.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, great. Any other questions? No? All right, thank you, Connie. We appreciate you. Okay, moving
Thank
along.
you.
We are at the Arts Commission.
I'm not sure, do we have somebody here from Arts Commission?
Gary pretty much spoke on it, so
Okay.
maybe that's okay. Okay, Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Great. I'm committee member Stout with the DEIC, and I'm excited to share that we've been working hard on reaching what we've identified as our SMART goals. They're specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time-based. The goals that we've been working on are finishing developing the charter, gathering demographic information about Estacada and putting it on the DEIC webpage. Some possible sources for this information might be census.gov and data.gov. We want to make sure the data sources are documented and accurate. We are developing a plan on how to reach out to the community so that the committee can engage the community to learn what issues the community sees with the DEIC. Possible promotion of the work of the DEIC through a water bill insert in order to get the word out so people can participate. Engaging other communities and commissions, continuing the development of the equity lens and its use, developing a recommendation regarding commission vacancies and processes for filling these vacancies, partnering with other committees and commissions on a community event, and we've submitted feedback on the housing needs analysis and added extra meetings so we can accomplish more. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Any questions for this? No? All right. That's it on the committees, right? Okay, and then we're next at the city manager's report.
Okay, I have 3 topics to report on. The first one, I wanted to answer a question from the last meeting about OLCC and the city council's responsibility with application when a business puts in an application to get an OLCC license. Secondly, I want to give you a little update on the LOC conference I attended, and then I have some ideas for summer. I know it feels like we're barely out of winter, but I'd like to talk a little bit about some goals for summer. So first of all, at the last meeting, we were discussing and were asked, and what's the city council's responsibility if they endorse or liability, even endorsing an OLCC application? And the information that we got back from the OLCC was that for a food cart license or any licensee with an outdoor area, the licensee premises is defined to be a specific location, and they draw that up on a floor plan that they submit to OLCC. If the drinking on premises is out of hand, or if the drinking is carried off premises from on premises, I think those are technical terms they use, then those are likely compliance issues, and someone should report it to the inspector, the OLCC inspector. If there's public drunkenness outside the premises or unruliness there, that's a police issue. We could always call the police. But as for the endorsement that they require for licensing, a city can choose not to endorse an application for a license, and then they would have to take that into account. However, our city attorney also responded to that question and said that the city council doesn't have a liability for the OLCC licenses. And if you choose not to endorse an application, which you could, then the license would likely just go through anyway. In order to not allow a license, there would need to be evidence of compliance issues that have taken place. And you'd have to kind of make a case as to why that establishment shouldn't be allowed a license. So it's pretty much, it's a little more than a courtesy notice that we get those OLCC applications, but it's not a liability to the city. It's something the OLCC handles. And if we are seeing things that we're questioning about compliance, if a brick and mortar business or a food cart is causing concern, then we can always check back in with OLCC and their inspector, because that's what they're responsible for. Yes, Joel.
I just, Mayor, I just
Sorry,
want to
I
clarify,
was-
no worries. I just want to clarify that what you just said there. Basically, we don't really have the end say on who gets the license. It's a courtesy to us. So if they say they want to give them a license, unless we have a good reason why, with like a history of violations, it's really, there's no control we have on that.
That's what I'm saying.
Okay.
That's the
I
information.
just
that
wanted
I
to
got.
clarify what you just said there.
Yeah, yeah, that's how I'm interpreting what they're telling us, is that we get notice. And I think if we did have a concern, a legitimate concern that we could say, that we could document to them, then I'm sure that they would communicate and listen with us. But pretty much that's what I'm saying. Yeah.
Did you provide that communication? I'd really be interested to read what they had to say.
Okay, sure.
Yeah, I'd just like to be informed.
And then secondly, OLC, the OLCC now to LOC, good grief. The conference I attended in Hermiston on Thursday and Friday was really great. They had some very informational sessions, and I'm hoping that several of us can go. I keep looking at you, but I realize Jerry and Justin are up there also. Could go in the fall for their conference, because they do have some really great classes. A couple of takeaways that I got was I would like to have, and this is something I think a couple of us have talked about, but cybersecurity, like to work with John at Bite a Gig and plan a tabletop event that we could practice, because we know, and again, it was reinforced this weekend, that it's usually human error. We click on something we shouldn't have, or that's usually how it happens. And so just to really raise awareness, practice, know what we're looking for, know how to avoid those issues with our employees. I think that would be a good thing to do. Also, I attended an HR session, and that was very interesting about the kind of the mindset of employees in these days. They want to know, are we mission oriented and are we values oriented? Because they want to know that the work they do is making a difference, and they also want to be affiliated with an organization they're proud of. And the speaker literally said that every time the council goes to the dais, they're telling the story of our town and our work culture. And so thank you for all the work that you do and the way you work together. He said it's not about whether you agree or disagree, but it's how you act and how you treat each other that's important. And that is very encouraging or discouraging to employees, depending on how the council gets along. And it really sets the stage for the rest of the town. So thank you for all the hard work you're doing and for working through, not always agreeing, but working through those issues for the best of the community. And then lastly, summer plans. Okay, so we're finishing up the budget for the next 3 weeks. That's going to be and amongst all the other distractions that happen, the big priority is getting that budget ready. You will have a budget meeting with the whole budget committee will meet on May 24th. We'll have a meeting at 6:30 for urban renewal and at 7 o'clock for the city. And the budget will be, you will have that by, is it May 12th? I can write that down. So you'll have some time to take a look at it ahead of time. Ask questions, we can go through things with you, but pretty much between now and May 24th, we're into the budget. So That's the plan for then. But then looking at the summer season, I know, people go on vacation. We kind of get into this. There's lots of events going on. It's just, I think summer can go by super fast. And so here's some things that I would like to prioritize for our summer season. It's getting the marijuana dispensary ordinance back to you. That should be, I think that will be coming right away in May, not pushing that to summer, because we're working on that with the attorney right now. And also getting that traffic and public safety committee up and running. I think that's something we could do well this summer. Engage the community for specific topics, which would be the Main Street design, the transportation system plan update, which is just starting, and we're going to need some volunteers for that, and we're going to need community feedback. And then also feedback on a new location for the wastewater treatment plant, outreach to potential stakeholders and the community, and just when we get a little bit more information gathered, being able to share that and really engage the community on it. We're going to start quarterly open houses. We're trying to come up with a catchy name, so if you have an idea, but kind of open hours at City Hall where it'll be staff. We could have committee members, if they have something they're working on that they want to get out to the community, if any of you want to attend and just engage with the community. I guess it's kind of a variation of coffee with a counselor. We could have coffee and people could come and talk to staff, talk to any counselors or committee members who are here, but just kind of kicking off this community engagement that's more fun, more interactive, that I think people would be able to get excited about this summer. Also with the events, we could probably do some outreach. I think we'll have a booth at the farmers market that we could utilize on Saturdays for our committees or for other nonprofits in the area, or for staff to be there. And then lastly, so we've got a couple of ordinances, and then engaging the community, and then, not lastly, the yard. I thought I was trying to narrow it down to a few things for summer, but I'd really like to get the yard debris program. I'd like to get it going. If we hit a wall, we'll have to just deal with that then, but I'd like to get that going, and we'll be seeing a rate review and probably a rate adjustment coming from our garbage haulers after we get the information from the county on their rates and what's happening there. But I think that people are really, I think yard debris service is a service that they need. And I think that would be a good accomplishment for this summer. And then lastly, this was just kind of an idea that popped up, so you guys can give me feedback if you want, via email or phone call or whatever. But to hear from the council and the community on the vision for Estacada. We don't have the staff bandwidth and time right now to start a whole visioning process, but I was talking with staff today, and to just start gathering feedback about, we hear concerns, we hear, things people like, or usually what they don't like or what they're worried about. And so really to start gathering feedback on what people see for Estacada, and how, how they want us to move through the next couple of years until we can do a full visioning strategic plan process. So I would like to, at each council meeting this summer, starting in June, ask a question. It might be, what is your favorite thing about downtown? And we'll try to narrow it down to that. Just a quick answer from council. People, if they want to share in the public comment time, they could say quick, what they like about downtown, or maybe what makes a residential neighborhood in Estacada feel comfortable and welcoming. And I will have to come up with some good questions, but just, I think to hear what people like, what they see Estacada continuing with or moving toward, I think that would help us move toward that visioning process of really being able to know that we're not, people aren't losing the ownership they feel. I was reading in a book just a couple of days ago, and it's about ownership. It's if it's your town, that affects how you drive. It affects how you're walking down the street, and there might be garbage on the street. You pick it up and throw it in the can. It's my town. It's if I see somebody that I don't know, I welcome them to Estacada because it's my town. And I think that with a lot of new people here and a lot of activity going on, I really just want to move that forward. So I'll stop talking because that was, we've been here for a while, but I just kind of, that's kind of what I think we could work on this summer that would be fun and we'd keep things moving forward. And we get to fall and say, hey, we did some good stuff this summer. So that is my report for tonight.
All right, thank you, Melanie. That was perfect.
Thank you.
Appreciate you. Okay, we are now at council business. Okay, first on council business. I have second consideration for ordinance 2022-004, an ordinance amending Title 16, Development of the Estacada Municipal Code. So hearing that, do I have a motion on the floor?
I move to approve ordinance 2022-004, an ordinance amending Title 16, Development of the Estacada Municipal Code.
Okay, do I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, all those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed? Okay, motion passes. Thank you. Okay, we are at B, which is ordinance 2022-006, an ordinance adopting franchise agreement with Portland General Electric Company. Now, I know there was a question on this because.
Yes, I just wanted to clarify what the purpose of the franchise agreement is for. And it kind of goes through that in the first whereases in the opening paragraph and the whereases that follow. That the city has authority to regulate the use of the public right of way and to receive compensation for the use of that public right of way. And so the purpose of the franchise agreement is for the grantee, which would be PGE, to have their facilities upon, over, along, across the surface of, above and below all of our streets, alleys, roads, highways, sidewalks, bridges, park property, and other public ways. So that's really the purpose of this very many pages of a franchise agreement, is to come to an agreement with them for the fee that will be charged, which is 3.5%, which is what is allowed, and then to regulate that. So it doesn't include a lot of other details. I know there was a question about the requesting additional streetlights, and I did ask about that, if that's something that we would include in the franchise agreement. And the answer that I got back is that no, because it's just regulating the use of the right of way. But the answer they gave also included, I'll just read it to you. It says PGE does not have any issues with the city requesting additional streetlight poles and or streetlight at any time. Requests may be a separate work order and additional fees may be required for the installation depending on what PGE facilities are available to service the streetlight. For example, on May 12th, I just got the notice today, they're going to be finishing putting up the lights on the poles that don't have lights on Lakeshore, and they've already done Elm, and there's been random lights like the one at River Mill intersection. Those we go through this process, we submit a work order, and they respond to that and put it up. But it says the lighting project manager can review the request with the city, help determine what type of luminaire to install and any cost associated. Other municipalities request additional streetlight facilities as needed also. And so that is their process. So they don't include it in this particular agreement, but we do have that process in place. And I have utilized that process and it works very well. So that's pretty much all that I have to share. It's a 10-year agreement. They'll come back and request a renewal in 10 years. We opted not to have auto renewal because we feel like the community is changing a lot right now. And so, and 10 years is a pretty long time, and we don't have a very bulky process to go through. So we just requested 10 years. Yes,
All
and
right.
questions, I
Thank you
guess.
for that information. And Joel, or
Also, I think he was
Justin?
first, so.
Justin, go ahead.
Yeah, just a quick question, because I remember Denise talking about this too,
Mhm.
and I might have missed it, but what was the previous percentage that we were charging, and is it increasing?
The previous percentage was also 3.5%. And I had that question here too. They can't agree to a 5% franchise fee, which is what we'd asked, or I should say Denise had asked them for previously. The maximum is 3.5% because that is the amount that they're allowed to collect on standard customer rates that we are allowed to collect. The city is welcome to pass on, it's called a privilege tax, 2 words that are not appealing. I don't know why they call it that. But it's called a privilege tax. It's in the franchise agreement. We can request that at any time that we feel that if we needed to have more funds coming in from that particular franchisee. However, it will be included as a separate line item on customer bills. So then the total result would be 5%. And that would get remitted to the city, but 3.5% would be paid by PGE and 1.5% would be passed through to the customers. So that could be something that if you want to consider that at a later time, I'm not recommending it at this time, but you guys could definitely give us that direction.
Yeah, I don't think we want to go down that path for the customer.
Thanks
But
for asking.
We appreciate that. We do appreciate that. Thank you.
Okay.
Joel.
All right, I'm the one who was pushing for having us to have the control in that area.
Mhm.
And we're talking about our public right of way there. And so we can set some things on there, but I'm willing to go a different route if we can still achieve the same thing. I understand that there's a process where you can submit an application to them, but that leaves them in that process with the full decision-making capabilities to say, well, we don't think one needs to go there because we don't have nothing in writing that gives us that ability to say, we're willing to pay for it. We'd like you to put one there despite your considerations. There's a lot of things going on. I don't like handshake deals or word of mouth. I like things in writing because that's part of government. And so I think we need something in writing that says, if we so choose, and we want a street light at this location, even if they don't agree with it, their analysis says it wouldn't be effective, that we have the right to do that. And so just so that we have that piece there, because I guess from what I understand, they did an analysis of the area of that. Well, it's using this as an example because it came up recently, and there wasn't a need to have one there. Is the last I heard. So because there were streetlights in some of the areas already, but as you can see, there's already a problem in that one area. It took how long for us to get the ones on Lakeshore that they're putting up now? I think you've been asking for a couple of years, correct? Councilor
I
Dunsmere?
can't remember how long.
Less than a
Yeah,
year?
they have been a little behind, I will say, but yeah.
Yeah, and that's fine. And I think that might have been on their own availability. I get that. But I'm just saying, have something in writing on there that on city property in the right of ways, we have the ability to, if so needed, to enforce to put something in those places. I think it's a good idea to have it in writing somewhere, even if it's on a separate document, just that we're covering those bases for the people of Estacada. So.
Well, I think there's some justification in that, as long as we put it in writing that they will counsel us on this. I mean, I want their information. I want what they know.
Of course.
Obviously, they do this every day, so I would appreciate that. And obviously, we understand that we would end up paying for that.
Right. They do have information in here about relocating poles temporarily or permanently or undergrounding, and that's all documented. If you want to reject this, and I could go back and ask them again, if we could put that in there, but my experience has been with their process that it's pretty streamlined process. I asked them if it was just in our tariff that we have with them that sets the rates. But she did not indicate, is Julie on here? Oh, maybe Julie wants to speak to it. Sorry. I forgot that Julie was here tonight. Anyway, yeah, do you want to speak to that a little bit, Julie, or do you think that I'm being clear? Sorry, I forgot she was here.
Is she on there?
She is on here. I think she is. Unless I talked too long and she gave up hope on me.
She's there in name.
Yeah, anyway, if Julie wants to jump in and say something, feel free. So we could do that, but I think that, and also the study that you're referring to, it might have been a misunderstanding between the property owner there, because I don't know of any study that happened in that Hillway and Cemetery Road area that we discussed last time. I did talk to that property owner and let her know that there's a street light on both sides of her property. And so I didn't feel that was, maybe I overstepped my bounds on that, but I felt that there wasn't a need for another light. But I do know now that we're re-looking at it, the light that goes over Cemetery Road, maybe we could add another light to go towards Hillway. I think it's not an issue with the with the documentation. I think it's just an issue with communication between me and PGE, making sure that, because when we put a street light in, then the city pays for it. And you saw, we just put, I've only requested new lights to go on poles that are already existing. But if we determine that there needs to be another one, we could always do that and just follow the same process. But if you as a whole want to send this back or decline it, that's your agreement. I would recommend approving it, and then we could continue working with
I think
PGE.
Paul has something
Yeah.
real quick.
Yeah, I feel like what we're asking for here about having additional wording in would be outside of the bounds of the purpose of this agreement. That what, I like what Counselor Licky's asking for here, but
Mhm.
it seems to me that it would be more of an issue maybe with the Oregon Public Utility Commission, the one that establishes where the various utilities are going to operate within the state of Oregon. That there may be something in place already for that. What this is, it's just for the right of way
Right,
that they would have access and we get compensated
right, you're right, both of those, yeah.
for the city property. You know, as such, it seems like it's meeting the purpose. Our lawyer has looked over it. He's approved it. City's recommended we go
Mhm.
ahead and approve
PGE's
it as well
attorneys have
too.
approved it also, yeah,
From my standpoint, I'm good with it.
okay.
And
Joe, go ahead.
I'm willing to do it outside the document. That's fine if we have something in writing that says that. It's in, when you look at the compensation factor, the ability to leverage that ability to put a pole somewhere is considered a compensation factor. Even if we're paying for it, that would fall into that range. But I'm willing to understand that they have processes, and apparently she
Mhm.
disappeared off the thing. But I understand they have processes, and I'm totally cool with that. I just think that we need something in writing, and it's not, it's so weak that when we have situations where people are, the citizens are asking us for something, we can leverage to do that. That's all I'm trying to get there, is just
Okay.
give us that ability to do what we need to do for our people.
Mhm.
So without any roadblocks.
And, I'm comfortable with the way this is written. I think we can come back and visit this with PGE. We've met with them numerous times, and I know just about everybody there. I think we can sit at the table and come to a compromise that works in the fashion you're talking without
Yeah.
changing the ordinance that we have right here. So let's continue on with this, and then reading that ordinance. I think you all know the ordinance, so if I can have a motion on the floor.
I'll go ahead. I move to approve ordinance 2022-006, an ordinance adopting a franchise agreement with Portland General Electric Company.
Can I have a second?
Second.
First and second, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. All right, last on the list, we have ordinance 2022-003, an ordinance amending Title II, Administration and Personnel of the Estacada Municipal Code.
Okay, this is a big one. Not necessarily big in the grander scheme of things, but a lot of details changing the code in changing what was there to make it more precise and more more easy to read and understand how the committees and the commissions are appointed by the council and are responsible to the council. Just a little bit of background that's included in the staff report. At the previous meeting, which was, I'm not sure which meeting that was, but the council requested a review of the entire code regarding boards, commissions, and committees. At the January 24th council workshop, the council discussed and recommended changes to Title II of the Estacada Municipal Code. Since that time, staff has taken those recommendations and created the attached ordinance, which is, in my opinion, very difficult to read in the what's taken out and what's being put in. But that's how the program works. So we might present it if we have this complex with this many changes, we might present it in a different format, not use our code program just for the ease of being able to see what we're changing. But basically, this makes it realigns and redefines how the committees and commissions are set up. It's not making any huge changes, just clarifying, for instance, that their relationship to the city council, and then how they're appointed, and then how they would be removed like if somebody is absent or moves away. And how they're organized and how they operate. And then we have listed all of the committees, the Budget Committee, Planning Commission, Public Library Board, Estacada Area Arts Commission, Parks and Rec, Downtown Estacada Commission, Diversity, Equity, Inclusion Committee, and the Infrastructure Committee. And that's when it gets, there's a lot of ins and outs there. But each section, which I was mistaken about before, each section has the responsibilities of that particular committee listed in the code. And so it says what the council has appointed them to do. It makes it clear that they're not empowered to promise any city funding. That always has to be approved through the council, and that they're responsible to the council for the work they're doing and their assignments. So if you have any questions, I could try to answer those. Also, the one change that we might, if you want to adopt this, DEI has recommended just some verbiage changes to in their purpose section. And I highlighted that in a message that I sent out to you about, they just wanted to revise A, B, and just a little section of C. I don't see any problem with them rephrasing it, their responsibilities like that. Because I think it does make it easier to understand, but that would be up to you if you wanted to take their recommendations on that. Yes.
I have a slew of things here, so I'll do a few, then I'll come back to a few more
Okay.
after that, okay? So that way I'm not
Can I
thinking-
just take a moment out for a quick break?
Yes.
I've been in here a long time.
Yes. Can we take a
Okay.
5-minute break?
Just a few seconds. here before
All
we
right.
go.
Okay, we're going to start the recording. I forgot she already says it.
Okay, great. Joe, we're back to you and your questions.
All right, so like I said, I have quite a few, so I'll do a few of them and then I'll come back to some more.
All right.
So, I'm gonna jump in and I have some about the DEIC things, but I'm gonna skip back to those a little bit, okay?
Okay.
So the first thing is under 2.14.020, the board categories.
Okay.
I couldn't find where those were actually defined anywhere, or do we have a definition of what those are and how they curtail throughout there, or is it just listed? Because I couldn't find them anywhere in the paperwork.
On the next page in 2.14040, it just talks about how they're appointed. I think that's the variation there. Like it says statutory, the first one, statutory bodies and advisory boards. Those members are appointed by council motion. And then, so it doesn't like it give you a definition, but it tells you like next task force and city council subcommittees are appointed by the mayor, and project advisory committee, which isn't even on the list.
I think for clarity, it'd probably be good to have some actual definitions of what those boards are. So, that way it understands what the purpose of each board is and how it's, some individual organization to them and how they differ from each other.
Write that down.
So that was kind of the first one. And so.
And just to say, we don't have to, I'm not looking for you to necessarily adopt. I mean, if you want to adopt it, we could just be done with it and move on. But if you want to have like this, make some recommendations on things to revise, we can definitely do that and just bring it back.
Do we want to get consensus on each, if I bring something up and everybody agrees on it so that they know or how do you?
Well, I think just them bringing it back as a whole, I mean, rewritten to where we can actually understand it. I had real trouble understanding where we were at.
Wasn't
I
just
mean,
me.
It was all over the place. So,
right.
I
We
mean,
can-
not that I don't think you guys do a great job. Don't get me wrong, but this is not about what you've written up. But I personally had trouble, understanding most of it. So I think bringing
Okay.
it back, written properly the way you want it so that we can tell. So I'm not
Okay.
looking at one thing that is going to be there and then on the
Right.
next page. It's
It's
off.
hard to, because we kind of want to show you what we're taking out
Yeah.
and what we're adding, but I think we can do that. We can work on it to make it a little more clear. So adding definitions of the categories.
Yeah,
Let's see if we
JD
can-
has some over here too.
I did want to add to what Counselor Lickey was saying. Not only do we need the definitions of the board categories, but I also didn't see any of these board categories being designating any of the boards. Like I didn't see any of the boards actually designated as any of these things. So like it says, well, we've got statutory bodies and advisory boards. Okay, well, the planning commission, which one do they fit under? You know, the DEIC, which one do they fit under? It doesn't actually go through and specify which committees or subcommittees are designated in
Which- what
which
they are.
category.
Okay. Yeah, I will make sure that, I thought it did do that, but it's really hard to find it in here.
It's kind of convoluted into the code a little bit and not really clear, so.
Okay, yes.
yeah.
So definitions and then which, like
Assignments.
assignments. Okay.
Yeah,
Can I,
designations.
Mayor, might I
Okay.
throw the next one up there, Mayor?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay,
On page 3, under the 214040, section F, I kind of felt that while we have it in the codes, I think that could probably be stricken, in my opinion, because while one, that's not fully inclusive to every single board, at the same time, you know, it would be, I just didn't think it was necessary, which it says, just so everyone else will talk about, whenever possible, persons will be appointed who have demonstrated interest, experience, and expertise in the area associated with the board they are applying to. I just felt like it was an unnecessary extra verbiage we didn't really need. It's obviously if they're going to apply for it, if they're interested in it.
it's
And
kind of
then-
common sense, I guess, that you, however, when people are applying, like if you're trying to appoint a variety, it kind of gives you some, just to push back on that a little bit, it gives you some discrepancy in like, okay, how am I going to pick which person, which it is common sense, you probably would pick the person who has the, you know, expertise, but that, I guess, do you want people that have expertise in the area, or do
I
you just
think
want people
it's
that
just
have?
going to vary from one board to
passion.
the other. Honestly, I just felt that was extra verbiage. So.
Paul, you think?
Yeah, I don't mind leaving that in there. I agree. It is extra verbiage and we're kind of at the state where we're thankful to get volunteers or members when we
True.
get somebody that puts in. I guess what it would avoid is favoritism. Such that if somebody does apply and they've got a connection to a decision maker,
Well,
that they would be given a weight over somebody that may be new and has experience. That's all I could think of for something like that.
Yeah, and well, that's what we have, the council that would choose the people that come in instead of a single person. Because it's a different council on every 2 years, and the boards and things that allows us to have different change out. And so, but either way, it's not something super critical. It was just an opinion on there,
Okay,
and I don't care either way. So.
I'll take a look at that and see if it,
Katie.
yeah.
I'll just give my 2 cents on this one. I actually agree with Counselor Lickey because of the fact that if I was personally looking at 5 applications and one of the applications was with someone who has plenty of experience, I'm going to pick the person with experience. But that being said, I don't want our code or anything in our code to discourage someone who doesn't have that level of expertise from applying. So while it is common sense that we would probably pick someone with expertise, I don't want there to be anything in our code that discourages someone without expertise from applying. So for that reason, I do agree with Counselor Lickey on that one.
Wow, you guys are really thinking this through. That
Yeah.
is a good point. Okay. Yeah, any other comments on that? I mean,
I have lots more. I don't want to take up other people's
I have
things that they
several
have.
questions about other things too. I'm
okay,
just
all
trying to-
right, so
All right,
probably,
I'll-
so we'll
I'll
take a
yield
look
for a
at
short period.
removing that, okay?
All right. So I'll go with Katie here for a few and see where we're at with ours.
All right, page 57 of our packet, I guess it's page 4 of this document we're looking at in particular. 214060, number C, each board shall meet at least once each month or as needed to conduct its business. Out of curiosity, how is that going to affect something like the infrastructure committee that only meets quarterly? Or are we going to be asking like our infrastructure committee to now meet once a month?
Good question. We were interpreting that to mean at least once a month or as needed fewer, but I think we should take at least out. We could say they shall meet once a month or as needed. And that way, if there's a committee that is not as, they don't need to meet, or like the planning commission, they don't meet every month, they meet as needed. So maybe we should take out that at least. But standard would be to meet once a month, like you guys meet twice a month, but standard for these would be to meet once a month or as needed. And if we take out that at least, would that be? Okay.
I like
Okay.
that.
I'm more comfortable with that. Thanks for
Um,
pulling that out.
In that same section that we were just looking at, now I'm going to move on to letter F. Appointed board members are considered public officials. As such, they are expected to abide by the Oregon government ethics law of the state of Oregon. First of all, I love that being included in our code, because that is something that all of our boards and committees and commissions have been expected to adhere to forever.
Right.
That being said, my biggest question is, are we as a city going to be doing anything in terms of providing ethics training? Because with all of the different members that we have sitting on boards and committees and commissions, they might not actually know what the Oregon ethics laws are. And is that something that we as a city are going to be able to accommodate or provide?
We do from time to time provide a pretty robust training on that, but that might be something that we'd want to look at with the document that is after this. I forgot what it's called.
The code of conduct.
Yes, the
Yes.
code of conduct. And like when new members come on, or when they're, is it March or April? I can't remember, they start their first meeting, to have staff, go over that with them and just answer questions or talk about the code of ethics. And a lot of times they're not dealing with as complex issues as city council would be, but still good for them to know so they don't get into hot water with that. Yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna
You can move
switch
on to
over
the
here. Joel?
Something in that particular area that we can add to that code that she was mentioning would be something like are required to attend annual ethics training or ethics training within X amount of period of time of being appointed, or something along those lines. But in other words, a requirement in our code that they get ethics training. I mean, I would love to see that for the council as well, that we're required to get ethics training within either X period of time or from being appointed or elected, or annual even would be a good idea. So.
Okay, let me see if I can find a good way to implement that.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
And since we're kind of right there in that area, G on that same area, I would love to see something in there that says something about chair term limits. So that way there's a cycle leading. So like if someone's reelected to the board 3 times, they can only be a chair once or twice, maybe total. And then someone else has to come in and chair that board. So I think chair limits is important. So.
Okay, any other feedback on that?
No?
I mean,
That particular one with the chair
Yeah.
limits.
On chair limits?
You guys.
I actually have something to add to that on the
Okay.
chair
Justin?
limits. I just see that in some of the boards I've been in and a part of, there's people who are on there that just don't want to be a chair. So I guess if you put a limit on that and then nobody wants to step up as a chair, what do you do at that point? If nobody that's already currently on there and you have your full limit of everybody on there, but nobody wants to step up as a chair, what do you do? Eliminate somebody?
So,
I would say just make it a requirement that you may have to serve as chair. I mean, if they're on a council, a council committee, I mean, they're there to serve, and sometimes that may be that they have to chair or something if their limits have disqualified the normal person that's been taking chair over the last 2 terms or whatever else, and they can just say, hey, this may be something that falls on you or something, and someone just has to step up. But I mean, we don't have to discuss all that now. I just want to propose that the chair
might
limits
be an idea.
concept and at least look at how we might be able to approach that. But I mean, you got a good point, Justin. I mean, I'd have to take some discussion. Sorry, Counselor Gates.
That's all I'm saying is I just think we need to think about it, because if nobody steps up and then it kind of discourages people from wanting to be a part of it, and then you start losing members. That's all I was thinking about.
Paul?
I was just gonna echo Justin there. I've run into that on a couple commissions that I've been involved in, that people would prefer to drop off the commission as opposed to chair.
Yeah, I concur. We can consider that, but I think those, yeah. I don't know.
Not what I signed up for.
Okay. Yeah, so it sounds like it's kind of consensus to not add a chair limit. I mean, I don't know if anybody else has, I don't know.
Yeah. Well,
Okay, I can look in that if there's any other precedent
Here's-
for doing that, but
Here's what I'll say. I would like to see language proposed, but not necessarily adopted right away. That basically says, if possible, that, that the chairperson not be the chair for more than 2 terms or something like that.
okay.
And maybe just include the verbiage if possible, because
Mhm.
sometimes it's not possible.
Mhm.
And leaving at least the room for flexibility in our code would be appropriate.
Okay, we can look at that. And then also the code of conduct might also address that, people need to step up and we don't want to put them in something that they're not comfortable to do, but usually there's several people on the commission. Somebody could take a turn. It's just a year, right?
Maybe something worded that if the chair has served 1 or 2 terms and someone else wants to run, then that current chair becomes ineligible to be chair again. And then the next person who wants to be chair, if there's only one, can be appointed.
So to
Or-
try to allow for.
Yeah, if
other
there's
people
another
to
person, then
step
that
in
one
if they
becomes
want,
something along those
right.
lines. So.
So everybody has a chance to grow in leadership. So that is maybe a better way to phrase that, to allow for a variety of people to step up and chair a committee, unless it's not required if sometimes people don't step up unless it is required. We'll look into that and see how we can get that in there. And also I think the ethics training, suggestion and just basic board training is probably something we need to kind of up our game with. So,
okay, and
Yeah.
Katie's got some more.
Well, going along the lines of ethics, since we're on the topic of ethics right now, one of the things that I see going hand in hand with ethics is accountability and transparency. Transparency and accountability, if you don't have those, you don't really have ethics. So for me, I have had questions in the past about who is serving on these boards and what they bring to the table for these boards. Without pointing out exactly which board I'm talking about, it would be really nice, I think, if we could have profiles for the committee members the same way or similar way that we have the profiles for the city councilors. That way, we as citizens who have questions about, well, who is on the Arts Commission? And, why do these people want to talk about arts in our city? What kind of stakeholdership do they have in the arts in our city? So that I could just pull up the Arts Commission board and say, oh, well, gosh, these are the people that are serving on the board. This is what they do for a living. And then that way we've got some level of transparency and accountability to our citizens. Now that brings me to what I was going to bring up, which is on page 64, which is page 11 of our document we're looking at. For the Planning Commission, no more than 2 voting members of the commission may engage principally in the buying, selling, or developing of real estate for profit as individuals, or be members of any partnership or officers or employees of any corporation that engages principally in the buying, selling, or developing of real estate for profit. No more than 2 members shall be engaged in the same kind of occupation, business, trade, or profession. I want to just say, I love it. I love it so much. But the question that I had was, how am I as a citizen, not city councilor, but next year when I'm just a regular citizen, how am I going to know who those 2 people are on the commission? How am I going to hold the government accountable that they're keeping to this? It would be really nice, especially if we're going to be putting things in here that say we can't have more than 2 people doing this. If we as citizens could know, well, what are those people doing on those committees? And, how do we easily identify the 2 people that are kind of taking up those spots? That would be, in my eyes, a really appropriate next step. Again, to have ethics, you need to have the transparency and accountability to go with it. So I love all of the additions that we're seeing to the codes, and what's being proposed. I love it, but I also want to see next steps being taken to really make it transparent and hold us accountable.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's straight out of the ORS for the limit on on the number of people in the same occupation in building. They call out building, but then they say no two people in the same occupation anyway. And we can identify, like, are you, because on some boards, you have to be inside city limits. Others, you can be in the zip code, you can be in the school district, you can be in the library district, and we identify, I think we do on the, I'm not sure if we do on the website anymore, but we identify who is in which position. And so that might be something that we add to the planning commission, because that's particularly called out there. So we could look into that just for transparency, as you say.
Joel?
Thank you, Mayor. Actually, I had that same area highlighted on mine, but for a different reason.
Okay.
But still, it's a good one she had there. But my question was about how can this apply? Because I've had some questions before about the people on the planning commission doing development in our city and things, and any conflicts in there and concerns. Would it be something that we should add in there or consider? I'm actually asking a question to the committee, to the council here. If we should put something in there that if they're developing in our city or during their term, they can't develop in our city because they would have sway on how things work with the planning commission and, you know, recommendations to the council. Would that be a conflict? And so I've been asked your questions before. I don't have any answers for those. And so this would seem like a good time to kind of bring that out. So.
My first thought is Taylor usually, or whoever the planner is, usually explicitly describes what the rules are for, so it's not a free for all. I think they should definitely, I mean, there might be times they might need to recuse themselves if they're involved with a particular development or something like that. But do you think that's sufficient? I guess that is a question to the rest of the council. Do you think that's sufficient?
I don't.
I guess to me, this is a pretty big one to bring up, more than a discussion that I think we're prepared to hit tonight. I
Okay.
think this might be one that we
We could look.
table. Yeah. and
I would
worth
even
looking at.
recommend getting Peter involved in that one too. That's his name right there, our
Mhm,
Lori. Okay,
mhm.
got it right. Yeah, getting
Okay.
a Laura involved in that one too, just to kind of see what, so we're not overstepping somewhere either and what we can and
Mhm.
can't limit on. So.
I have so many things I could say right now. What I'm going to say instead of the things that I'd like to say is there's a lot of gray area for development, because we're not just talking about developing houses. Those houses come with things like an internet connection. So is someone who is connected to, for example, the Reliance family, are they barred from being able to make decisions on based, on housing density, for example? Because the more dense an area, the more internet connections they're going to have, the more profit that company could be potentially looking at. So we're not just talking about development of single family homes. We're talking about development of everything. And that would be really hard then to sort of police, to enforce, that nobody who's doing any sort of development in our city can be a part of these decision makings. I think that having the no more than two people can be a part of that kind of industry helps keep the voting quorum more fair. If there's only two people that are actually engaging in that level of business, then we're not opening up the city to experience a whole bunch of corruption, if that makes any sense, because there's only two voting members as opposed to the other five. But
And that's not an Estacada rule, that's
It's a
a
state-
or-
That's a state
and
rule,
I can
yeah.
So
see
there's
how
things in place
that
already.
transparency and accountability we were speaking earlier would actually roll back to that as well. So
and then that way,
I think that's a bigger discussion.
and then really that way, if we see someone who is, like Cedar Ridge, for example, we've approved several subdivisions in the last year for Cedar Ridge homes. And if someone was working for Cedar Ridge homes and on the planning commission, making decisions on behalf of Cedar Ridge homes or voting in favor of them, that's a clear ethics violation. And we can file an ethics complaint that the Oregon Ethics Board can then investigate and enforce. If we're actually really concerned about ethics in our city, and especially the planning commission, there's already an outlet for us to enforce the rules that are already in place.
Yeah, and I just think, like I said, I think the bigger discussion that falls back to is the accountability and transparency piece.
And the
So-
transparency, exactly.
So,
Okay, I'm concerned about the time because you guys have been in a meeting for a very long time. If you want to keep asking questions, I'll leave that up to you, but we could take what we have here and rework this so it's easier to read, make some of the implement the suggestions. You could, if there's just a couple more, I mean, we could go ahead and take those, but I know that everybody's
Katie's good on hers.
just ready to
So,
go.
Joe, are you good on yours?
I've got a couple more, but if it's we're at time, we can always table this and.
Yeah, we can table it and you can bring it to an
Bring it
email
back.
to Melanie and maybe add it.
Yeah, we can talk
to
about it.
this.
I can just make a motion to table and then we can pick it up again, because some of these things just are for the discussion in an email.
Yeah.
So.
Okay.
Can I make a?
Yeah, make a motion.
I'd like to make a motion to table.
So if we table it, can I bring revisions back to you? I guess that's a
Yeah, I think
question.
you can.
We don't have to leave it right where it's
No,
at, right? I
no.
can bring, okay, so I can work on what the direction you've already given me.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and if I remember right, the Roberts rules is that it has to come up in the next council
The
meeting.
next council,
So,
meeting. Okay, perfect.
So I make a motion to table or the discussion on ordinance 2022-003, an ordinance amending Title II, Administration and Personnel of the Estacada Municipal Code.
Okay. I have a first. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
I have a first and second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. Okay, we are at the next citizen and community group comment. Do I have anybody online that's looking to chime in? No, okay. I have Brandy Licky. Hello.
Sorry, I can't hear Brandy.
Did the battery die? Thanks for letting us know. Sometimes we can't tell.
Can you hear me now?
Oh, yeah, we got you.
Okay, so like I said, I was disappointed in the DEC's decision because there's a lot of nonprofits in our town that do a lot of work that get very little acknowledgement at all. There's lots of them. And so I encourage you guys in council and the city workers to start, working together with some of these nonprofits. I see there's a lot of interaction between certain numbers of them, but there's a lot of them that there's no interaction from the city. So I would love to see that. And coming from someone who runs a nonprofit, we have a couple of people in the city that interact with us regularly, but there's lots of you we never see. So I think it would be a good way to maybe get that moving, is to start branching out and meeting people that run these nonprofits, more than just the few that are always mentioned. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, seeing as I have no more in front of me, I'm going to move on to the mayor council reports and comments. So I will start off with Charity.
Okay, just want to thank everybody for hanging out tonight. It's a long night, that workshop. Yes, yeah, thanks for staying. And anyone online listening, thanks for coming out. And Melanie, I appreciate all your input this evening and what you were able to glean from the LOC, and coming back to us with some, revised information and some corrections and things like that. And staff putting together a great packet. I appreciate that it wasn't hundreds of pages long, so it's always a pleasant thing. And thank you, everybody, for lively discussion as usual.
Thank you, Joel.
I just want to thank our community members for sticking through a very long discussion. I'm sure some of it can get kind of boring. Also want to thank candidate Lisa Davidson for House District 51 for stepping out and speaking. I'd encourage any other candidates that are representing our area to come out and speak as well. I think you're the first one we've seen this come out and spoke to the council. So, but yeah, I just wanted to openly encourage that. Thank you, staff, for the work. Yeah, well, that's all I got.
Okay, Paul.
Just thanks to staff for preparation and the preparation of council as well and discussion tonight. Thanks for all that showed up, and just a plug for May 1st, the road opens.
Oh,
That's right. Katie?
Who hasn't been thanked yet? Thank you to the board chair members for speaking to us today and giving us the updates from what your amazing committees are doing. And thank you for all of your hard work year round. And thank you as always to staff. You guys are awesome.
Hey, Jerry?
First of all, I want to apologize to everybody for not being there tonight. Under the weather, I've got some kind of a stomach bug and I didn't want to expose all of you to that. So I decided to join via Zoom tonight, thinking that was the best. I do appreciate all of you for coming. It's been a long night. I really appreciate staff and all the hard work you put in, and everybody in the, everybody that joined us either in person or on Zoom. Thanks for coming. It's been awesome. Good discussions tonight.
Hey, Justin?
Yeah, just thanks, everybody. Have a good night and a safe week.
All right, thank you, Justin. And on my part, I want to thank staff, as always. You guys do a great job, and I know it's a long night. And the people in the audience and the elected officials that are moving up. It's good to see you out there doing your work, and I can't wait to see what happens during election time. And I want to thank all the counselors, as always. They do a lot of work up here too and make a lot of decisions. It's not always popular, but they do it anyway. And at the end of the day, they've got to live with those decisions. So, and that's it for me. So thank you again. And this meeting is adjourned.